What's going on, folks? We're going to do something a little different because we are still not doing the pigskin preview on Tuesdays with Mancini being out. But since it's kind of a slow news week, we wanted to promote our Mess Around Friday show, which is a little more of a free-form, fun, just kind of talk things out show. So we're going to do a Mess Around Tuesdays. Most of the time, Tuesdays will be the normal show that we do, a little more structured. But we're going to try and get you guys to listen to us on Fridays by doing our Mess Around Tuesdays. So we have Mark Hirsch, Coach Shane McGowan, and possibly, if he could get something besides a flip phone, our good buddy Baltimore Blaine. Let's see if he can jump in here in just a little bit. He lives up in the hills, so he's probably running down the street right now. I can picture him, kind of a funny picture, him running down the street trying to get some reception. So at least it's funny to me, anyways. Let's start off by saying hello to our guys. What's going on, Mr. Hirsch? What's going on, Shane? How you doing?
Well, thank you, Chris Rose, and it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to expanding the listenership of our network. I think it's going to work out great. We actually have some interesting things to talk about, and we're going to free form it tonight, so I'm looking forward to that too. Shane?
Yes, hello, gentlemen. It's always great to be on air with you guys, and I'm sure Baltimore Blaine will be flying in at any time, some point, as he's running down the street, like you said, to get reception. But you're right. We have a lot of stuff to cover tonight, and we're going to try to get through it all. Mr. Rose, where are we going to start tonight?
In Steeler country. We wanted to have on our good – this is a shout-out to Dina and her group of listeners who are our biggest super fans. And we're going to have her on, but we're going to have her on soon, and you'll hear her as a guest all during the year. And we want to give a big shout-out to Dina and all of her friends who listen to us. So shout-out to you guys. And I guess I'll start off with Dina's favorite subject. Who's going to back up Roethlisberger?
Well, Chris, don't you think it'd be better to start off asking if Roethlisberger is even going to play next season?
No, he can play.
Well, last season he was saying he wanted to quit, so I think that it's reasonable to doubt whether he's going to, have his heart in it this time around. What do you think, Chris?
I think that he's got too good of an offense to kind of let that pass, and yeah, he's going to play. He's going to play. Let's get the opinion of our mental coach. He's coming to the end. He's got multiple Super Bowls. How much is the pain versus, in your experience, the people you've talked to at the end of their careers, how much is the pain versus the benefit, kind of come into it? But it's harder for him because he's not coming to one of those rebuilding teams. He's actually got some of the best weapons in the league.
Well, and I think that's probably why he's still going to hang in there for as long as he is going to or wants to, is due to the fact that he does have the weapons and they aren't rebuilding or resetting as a lot of other teams are right now. So with that, it's going to come down to a few things. First, I think he feels he's got some unfinished business considering what happened last year against the Patriots, et cetera, with the catch, as we all know about that and everything. And again, too, is he going to be able to stay upright? Is that O-line going to be able to protect him? And that's going to what's going to come down to as the season goes on. But again, Steelers and Steeler Nation need to understand is who is going to be his backup and who are they going to look to replace him when his time has come, which I think is coming very, very soon and shortly here.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Shane, I don't think he was out with a leg injury last year. And, several years in a row, he was always out. There's something wrong with his legs. And he's such a big guy. I think even if he's walking down the street, he's giving himself a pounding on those knees and ankles. So don't you think that enters into it?
Well, there's no question that the injuries and everything like that has played a huge factor on the mobility of his body. Again, I mean, he's not exactly the most graceful runner out there when he's got to hustle and move, but there is going to be something into which, how is his shoulder going to hold up? Meaning, if that O-line and everybody is not blocking him, how many hits is he going to take that's going to, tinder him into which he can't really do anything else? So this is the problem I think the Steelers are going to be looking at. And again, I don't know how aggressive they're going to be when it comes to the draft, free agency, or anything like that, but they do need to start looking past and into the future a little bit here.
Well, I can't disagree with you there. And to me, and I've been saying this last season, and I'm going to say it again, I think despite the fact that they did so well, and I think they were helped out by being in kind of a lame division, but I think the Steelers are on the way down unless they pull some kind of rabbit out of their hat. There's questions about what's going to happen with Le'Veon Bell, whether, he's talking about he's not going to come to camp and all that kind of stuff. And, it just goes round and round. And then, there's another question about Coach Tomlin, if he's keeping this team in line. I don't know. But I just noticed that Baltimore Blaine is with us. I want to give a shout out to Blaine. How are you tonight, Blaine? We're talking about the Steelers.
Hello, sir. Hello. All I can say is maybe Mercury is in retrograde, and karma's coming back to bite me about something I said on a previous.
You sound like you're podcasting from NASA.
from NASA's hidden base, from NASA's secret base on the moon.
Yeah, from 1963.
I feel like I'm today.
I know. I feel like I'm on a black and white television here.
Shout out to people who still rock flip phones. Shout out to the hills of LA for having great signal. So Blaine, if you can come through, we'll let you know if you're not coming through. Why don't you tell
Chris?
I'm sorry?
Can you see me? Here's your flip phone. Yeah. Anyway,
I got you. Why don't you give your take on the Steelers, please and thank you.
All right. So Steelers, I should be concerned about. I'm not they're good this year. This year, I believe.
Hey, Blaine, we don't have you. I apologize. I'm going to cut you off. We don't have you yet. We're not quite getting through. Why don't you try and reconnect real quick, and we'll give you a shot. I'm going to go ahead and give my 2 cents, and then why don't you try and reconnect, and we'll see if we can't get that fixed. So, as Blaine is waiting to come back, I want to talk a little bit about Tomlin and what Mr. Hirsch brought up, because that's something that a lot of people don't even think about. Is the Steelers, all things said, as much as I don't like a lot of things about the team, they are a loyal group. And they've had 3 head coaches, basically, since the 70s. And that's pretty amazing. And I'm the first one to say, it's a bit from Bill Burr, where he says, he lived too long. The guy's just too old. He said what he's going to say. I think that Chuck Knox should have quit in the early 80s, and I think his legacy would have been much better if he wouldn't have had all those bad 80s teams. But at the same time, I don't think Tomlin goes anywhere until he decides he goes. I think that's something that Rooney Sr. has put in place in that organization. I think that they have bucked the norm when it comes to a lot of things. So I think it's a good point that Mr. Hirsch brought up, but I don't think Tomlin's going anywhere. Now, the question that he actually asked was, is he the right coach? My answer to that would be no. What do you think, Shane?
I kind of agree with that. Is that I think he's needing to get a change. I think there has to be a new regime coming in there too for that team. I think he, after last season and even the season before, there seems to be a little bit, I guess, a little bit of controversy within that locker room, within the players, within everything. And I don't know. I just think they should be bringing in somebody else personally who could take over that role and lead that team in a better direction, a little bit more aggressive, but still a smart style of football. I think some of his coaches, too, the assistants, should also be on their way out as well. Mr. Hirsch, what do you think about that?
Well, one of my best buddies says that Tomlin is his favorite coach because he looks so fierce. But this is a guy that is letting a kindergarten run wild in the locker room. And, some people say, well, that's just the way it is today. These guys are always, paying more attention to Twitter and Facebook than they are to the playbook. And, I don't think I agree with Chris. I don't think Tomlin's going anywhere anytime soon, whether it's to the detriment of the team or not, because that's just not how they roll. And I think things would have to get pretty bad for Coach Tomlin to go anywhere.
Well, no, I'll agree. I'll agree with you that. Sorry about that. I'll agree with you on that. That I think it does have to get pretty bad for them to say, okay, you're done. But that's what's going to determine exactly how is Ben going to be playing, and how is also Bell and the rest of those guys. Also, are they going to be getting themselves moving? And is there going to be more controversy with, well, I don't like this franchise tag crap and everything like that. So I think there's going to be a few things with these players as well as on that defense. And if Tomlin can't get that team to function as a unit, I got a feeling that you're going to possibly see him and the rest of that organization changing.
Big Blaine.
I don't think I was going to this year either.
Yeah, sorry, man. You gotta try and call back. We can only hear like every other word. I apologize, buddy. All right, so
okay. Yeah.
Well, I
tried to mute Blaine and I muted myself. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
I'm surprised because I was saying the same thing last year, that Coach Tomlin was letting the locker room get out of control and that he wasn't taking care of business. And then Le'Veon Bell was holding out last year, and the Steelers almost went to the Super Bowl. So you can't argue a success, I guess, because how can you sit there and say, that he's not doing his job when they're getting so deep into the postseason? But when I'm thinking about the Steelers lately, I'm thinking more in terms of over the next 5 or 6 years than just next season. And they're going to have problems, and somebody is going to have to steer them through that. And I agree. I don't know if he's the right guy or not, but I think will be the guy.
So real quick, Coach Shane, as someone who is a fan of an AFC team, in my mind, and I guarantee you in Mr. Hirsch's mind because of how many teams you have to play, isn't the NFC like a lot better than the AFC right now?
Oh, yeah. No question about that. I mean,
that could be an answer to Mr. Hirsch's question about how deep they get, because who are they playing? Jacksonville, and Texas was in there. The Texans are there, and I mean it's kind of a joke these days.
It is, and again too is, I mean, look at the Texans. If you didn't have Deshaun Watson going down last season, with the injury and everything, the Texans were on a roll. I like the Texans. I liked how they were playing and everything like that. But as soon as you
45 to 48.
You get that key injury, though, of a quarterback going down, well, boom, there goes your season, unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles, who's got the Foles in the background, right? So I agree with you guys on that on the NFC.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. So since we're waiting for Blaine to jump in, and we'll wait for Dina also as far as the draft and the backup quarterback situation that they're obviously just ignoring. It seems like they're just going to take a match to the mattress and blow the whole thing up when it comes time. Mr. Hirsch, since this is the Mets Around show, I have no idea what you just wrote me. So why don't you explain what you just wrote?
Well,
my thing is hilarious. It is.
What I wrote down was Foles-itis. And what I'm talking about is tempering some of my comments about Case Keenum, and why Why, because I asked myself, why would the Vikings get rid of him? And, if we think back to Nick Foles, when he came off the bench to back up Michael Vick, he had an outstanding season and he really was hot and he looked great. And then he came back the next year and he was really in a slump. He wasn't good at all. And then they started trading him around and so I'm wondering if Minnesota was worried that Case Keenum was going to come down with a case of Foles-itis and be a total flop in the next year. And I think there must be some reason why something like that happens, especially in the case of Nick Foles, who came back. Does he have to come off the bench in order to be good? I mean, when he was a starter, he wasn't great at all. But when he came off the bench this last year, he did great. So I'm going to ask our mental coach, what is it that makes somebody who obviously has all the skills turn in such a poor performance? And do you think that that's the reason that the Vikings were willing to let him go?
Yeah, well, I mean, you got a combination of different things naturally, but I do think that for whatever reason, the Vikings saw something in that last game as well that sort of triggered some things for them to say, he can't get us over the hump in that way. And I think that's what they looked at and said, you know what, it's time for him to part ways and when this is done with. And for what they felt they could get for a price tag for getting Cousins and everything like that, I think they already had their mind made up that they wanted Cousins earlier than we all knew about. And so that's what it came down to. It really did in my mind. And again, Case Keenum is going to say, all right, you let me go. Now let me go to Denver and show you exactly what I can do. And I think that's going to put a lot of motivation in him. It's going to put a lot of fire into that Denver team as well. And if Elway can do some magic and get some picks, get him some people out there that he can get that ball to in a bit of a run game, they're gonna surprise you as well. So I think a lot of it's going to depend on what Elway can pull out of his hat to get him some help out there. But I think Case Keenum's got a chip on his shoulder, no question about that. And he's going to say, listen, you didn't want to pay me the same price you're going to pay this guy, but I got you guys pretty far. Now let's just see where we go from there. Again, though, you got to look at it. He threw that Hail Mary with the last seconds. I mean, the Saints, Drew Brees is still thinking he's on his way to a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? But it didn't work out that way. So there's a lot of things that I think are it's going to be an interesting season. That's my biggest thing is I know that. And a lot of these quarterbacks got a lot of chip on their shoulders that just changed teams.
Mr. Hirsch, give us our. Let's pay some rent real quick. Why don't you tell people where they can find us?
Yes, you could find us at knuckleheadpods@gmail.com. You can write us there, and we'll answer your emails on the air. And who knows? Maybe we'll give you a shout out anyway. Also, you could look for us at blogtalkradio.com/knuckleheadpods. And we're going to have 3 episodes up later tonight, including this one. You can find us there. And you could find us on YouTube.
Yep, find us here on YouTube at the Knucklehead Pods Network. Also on Twitter at KnuckPods. That's KNUCKPODS. We try to retweet a lot of the best stuff, best news coming out from everyone in the industry. So let's talk about someone that I wish Dina could have been on tonight, because someone that Dina absolutely hates, which is Vontaze Burfict, who looks like he is about to violate again. What do you think about Vontaze and what he has as far as a career? I mean, and this is going to lead into something, because I want to get Hirsch's input on this first. And after that, we're going to talk about the fact that there's a lot of news stories that Gruden wanted to get this guy, and that's going to lead us into our Raider story. So, Hirsch, what do you think about a guy that's notoriously known for taking out people's legs, getting in trouble, couldn't get a scholarship for most colleges because he was such a pain, like violent, problematic dude who's never gotten better, even though he's very talented and keeps violating substance abuse and PED policies.
Bad boy. He's a bad boy, and whatever team picks him up, I hope they're thinking in terms of 25% of the season at the minimum. He's not going to be with them because these 4-game suspensions, especially for the Bengals, who are never going anywhere in the postseason, that's a quarter of their season. So they sign him for the money, and then it counts for the salary cap, even if he doesn't get paid when he's suspended. So, I don't know. What can I say? The Bengals are loyal to him. They were loyal to their quarterback, Dalton. They let McCarron go. I mean, so, we go back to the Bengals. I don't know what they're doing over there, but they want to keep this guy. He's a run stuffer. And, yeah. Shane?
Oh yeah, well, I again, I don't know what the Bengals are trying to do. I never know what the Bengals are trying to do. That's the biggest thing. And I mean, I think this year is going to be a bit of a make or breaker for them in some ways, especially with the quarterback as well, because they're not willing to give Dalton an extension either, as everybody's talking extensions amongst the QBs. So I got a feeling there's going to be a bit of a shakeup coming in that organization pretty soon as well. But like I said, you know what, that guy's been nothing but trouble for I don't know how long, and it's really, really getting to be a real pain, I think, in that organization, that they need to start figuring out what they're going to do, what's going on with him and everything like that. So, Mr. Blaine, what do you have to say about that? Are you back with us, sir?
How do I sound?
You sound like you're in a tunnel, but we can at least hear what you're saying. So we're good with that.
Hello, guys.
Hey, there he is.
Hey. Too many settings on my phone. Okay,
Yeah.
so how am I sounding? Am I okay?
I blame the user error, not the technology. I'm pretty sure the technology works. It's user error usually. So real quick, just to jump in, we're talking about your good buddy Vontez Burfict.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you give us your 2 cents, and then you can leave off with what is Gruden thinking about trying to trade for this guy just before his possible suspension came out, and then we're going to jump over to the Raiders. So why don't you go ahead, get it off your chest. Tell us how much you hate Vontez.
Okay, I don't hate him. It's not my favorite player, but but Vontez Burfict he has more lives than any cat you've ever met. This guy is quickly becoming Josh Gordon of the Bengals. I thought the Bengals, once Marvin Lewis had signed an extension and they parted ways with Adam Pac-Man Jones, that they all say, okay, here they go. Maybe now Marvin Lewis has more of a say in the personnel and, not being saddled with these guys. But here we go. Vontez Burfict gets in trouble again, apparently, allegedly, and looks like he's going to miss the first 4 games of the season again. And Bengals are saying all the right things about standing behind their man. Now, there was a rumor that the Raiders were trying to trade for him before all of this came down. And of course, all of that is shot now. And the reason being was maybe not Gruden, but I believe his old defensive coordinator is now or defensive coach is now in Oakland. And there's some talk that maybe that he was trying to get Burfict over in Oakland as a reunion and trying to build up that defense a little bit. Burfict would be if he was playing, would be a perfect, not perfect. Let me back that up. He'd be a big plus to that defense, that linebacking core. Problem with Burfict is he is in his own way. He's a dirty player, in my opinion. He can't stay clean. This is PEDs again. And it's, you got to say at some point, what are you, when does time run out? When do you say goodbye to this guy? Now, like I said, I don't think Gruden was so much involved. It surprises me that Gruden would even let that even walk into his locker room. But then again, I'm assuming that Gruden is that guy that, with a squeaky clean locker room. What do you say?
Yeah, yeah, Shane.
Go ahead.
Shane, why don't you get us started on this? Because I got some questions about people that he's been cutting for character and then trying to trade for this guy. So why don't you get us started off?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, like I said, is Mr. Gruden is starting to show us that he's trying to bring in veteran players and get rid of the youngins in that way, and it's not working. In my perspective, I'm not liking so much of the things he's doing right now. It's going to be an interesting part. It really is. I'm just not sure the direction he's trying to go and what he's trying to prove. But when you start making these type of decisions to say, well, I'm going to get this linebacker because he's got that edge, that attitude. The problem is that you just got rid of Crabtree because of that same character. You got rid of the guy that has discipline problems at times, and you're going to bring in a linebacker who does the same thing, who's going to miss half the season because of drug problems, going to miss half the season because of illegal hits or whatever else is going to be. That to me is where we got the problems, and I just don't think it's a good fit in any way. So, like I said, that's the issue I have with that whole thinking about bringing that guy in, and I don't think it's going to happen, but they are heading into a different direction. That's for darn sure.
Damn, Shane, I wanted you to try and defend the guy because I'm about to go crazy on him, and you were rational and agreed with me that he's not doing the best job. And that's not how this was supposed to go. This was supposed to be like a Homer's kind of deal where
It's hard to be a homer though when the guy's making a bad choice. I mean, I'm
oh
going to look like
man,
I'm going to look like a meathead. That's my problem.
I'm in your same situation. So very quickly, I'm gonna bring up a couple of points, and then we're gonna pass it around to our fellow experts, including our Raiders homer, who's obviously being too rational for me to pick a fight with him, unfortunately. But Jesse Pantuosco from Roto World. So I'm quoting a lot from his article, so I don't want you guys to think that I'm, plagiarizing. But he wrote a great article on rotoworld.com, which is NBC's fantasy deal about the Gruden problem. And first line it says, it's important to remember that John Gruden's Oakland $100 million retread of a head coach. $100 million. Now he's with McKenzie, who's a Packer guy. Gruden's a Packer guy, so they're getting together. And they're cutting people and bringing on people. So they're cutting people like their punter, Sebastian Janikowski. They had 2 All-Pros there. Not quite sure what that is. They cut Patterson, who was the number 3, I think, average kick returner last year. So he's basically gutting the special teams, and then he brings on people like Doug Martin, begging Marshawn to come back on, making it good for him to come back on. An older Jordy Nelson with a quarterback that can't throw him open. I just see it now. I got a little angst coming back at me when we get around this. I mean, there's so many things. Breno Giacomini, he likes his, Gruden grinders, right? Breno is one of the most penalized tackles in the league. He was in Seattle. He was in the Jets. He was in a lot of places, and he gets in fights. He cleans up stuff. He's one of Marshawn's favorite guys because he's a mean dude. But he's also the worst ranked tackle in it by Pro Football Focus last year. I don't understand what he's doing. He's going back to the 90s, but he does not have any of the parts that Tampa Bay had. And people forget, he went to the Tuck game, he won the Super Bowl, and he did not go back to the playoffs since then. So I don't know. We'll go with Mr. Hirsch, then we'll go to Blaine, and then we'll let the homer kind of, I was going to say defend, but now I think he's got to kind of agree with me.
Well, Chris, Gruden was one of my favorite announcers, sportscasters for football. I found him very entertaining. When I heard about this whole deal that Oakland gave him, ownership of the team, this huge contract, I started thinking, what are they smoking over there? I thought they were doing that stuff over across the bridge there in San Francisco, or what kind of mushrooms are they eating on their omelets? Because the guy has obviously been around. I mean, maybe he's got something that I'm not seeing. And I have to agree with you that he took the Tampa Bay uh, to the Super Bowl once, and then after that, it was like, what's happening? So I think he's got a lot to prove. That's for sure. And in regard to what Shane was saying earlier about trying to keep the locker room, get the troublemakers out, that is all dependent on an assumption that the reason they got rid of Michael Crabtree was because of discipline problems. Maybe it was something else entirely. So aside from that, I went out on a limb. I thought the Raiders were going to, come to the top of their division and go deep into the playoffs last year, and I was totally wrong. So I'm not saying too much about the Raiders this year. So that's it.
Well, I think that Gruden. Well, first of all, Shane, I wanted to say something about the whole Crabtree thing. Gruden is actually, if he is behind this attempted acquisition, and if this is actually true, because the Bengals are denying it now, but multiple sources said that it was more than a rumor, that there was something behind it. And if Gruden was actually trying to bring in Vontez Burfict, that's worse. That's worse than Crabtree. That's going to the way to the extreme. And as far as Gruden is concerned, I've already said on previous shows that I'm not convinced. I'm sitting here going to watch the show. I think the Raiders are would have been a force this year with without Gruden, without a coaching change. And I think Chris, you'll disagree with me, but I didn't see the problem with the previous coach. This team is talented. They have the right weapons on the team. I think I feel a little better about Carr than you do. And I think that this team is a competitive team already. Now it's whether or not, as far as I'm concerned, whether Gruden is going to screw that part up by getting rid of the pieces that were successful and trying to go back to the old school that he wants it to be. And I'm not sure that if those players exist anymore.
I think you need a pushback from both Shane and I on the coaching. So I'll let you go, Shane. Knock it out, because I think that was the biggest problem for them.
Oh, I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, look at, even Del Rio had problems with King, the punter. He didn't like his antics. He didn't like a lot of things either. But he didn't have the kahunas to say, okay, enough's enough. He just took it in stride because the guy was getting them in certain field position. No question about that. Gruden comes in and says, if I'm being paid this money, I'm calling the shots, and that's what he's doing. And he's setting that tempo. He's letting everybody know that he's the man, and that's it. And the story. Again, I mean, look, we're not going to agree on a lot of things of what these coaches are doing with our guys when it comes to bringing in and releasing certain players. But I do think that Crabtree, in some ways, world is welcome. I think there's more going on with the punter as well in that locker room, and the attitude that was also about him and his antics too. So I think there's more than just that we just don't know about. But he's going to get picked up from somebody because he was like number 3 in the league or whatever it was. So he definitely has a job somewhere. Maybe you'll go to Seattle. I mean, Seattle always needs kickers. We know that. But I mean, so Coach Carroll there can have another guy that's going to bomb on him when it comes to kicking.
By the way, the only thing they don't need is a punter, because that you talk about your number 3 and number 2 is in Seattle. So the only thing we don't need, Seattle fans, raise your hands up high. We don't need a punter. Woo!
Well, who's the number 1 punter, by the way?
Here's my question. Is it legal to drop kick the ball through the uprights, or do you have to snap it to a holder?
No. Doug Flutie did it in one of his final games. The drop kick is still legal. And for those of you out there who don't know what I'm talking about, it is legal the quarterback can pick up the ball and he has to drop it so it hits the ground, and then when it bounces up, he can kick it through the uprights for 2 points. That play is still on the books. And the only person to do it in the last 60 years or 50 years. How many years I'm making up? But I know Doug Flutie did it in one of his last games. It's kind of like I'm smarter than all you guys. You should let me play in this league kind of thing, and it was really cool.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah, but he still did it. But he still did it, and most people didn't even know that was a play. I remember the announcers didn't even know that was a play. Like, what just happened? And the referee looked at each other, and it was an old ref, and he came up and said, "This is a legal drop kick, 2 points." And so, just to answer Hirsch's question, that is still a legal play. I'm gonna look up who is the number one punter, and I'll give you guys that info. Why don't we start? We'll go Hirsch. You guys kind of talk back and forth. We'll go Hirsch, Blaine, Shane, Ish in that order. What's going on in New England, guys?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting situation. Brandon Cooks to the Rams, I believe, amid a swarm of rumors that Gronkowski was going to be traded, or Gronkowski was going to retire, or Bill Belichick was just posturing. So what's behind door number what? Now Cooks is gone, and the pundits are saying, well, that means Gronkowski is going to stay. And Gronkowski is saying he's willing to play as long as Tom Brady is the quarterback. And Tom Brady has said he wanted to play until he was 45, but now the statements that Gronk's making about Brady are raising questions about maybe Brady is going to exit stage left sooner rather than later. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in New England, and no, I don't think anybody can ever figure out Bill Belichick. So,
well, I wanted to throw something else there with that list, is that we forget that a little earlier or right after the season, or even before the end of the season, during the postseason, there was questions of whether Bill Belichick was going to stay there, with some frictions reported between him and Brady and the owner. So I'm wondering if Bill Belichick is going to be there past this season. Brady's talking about, he's now backstepping about playing to 45. He'll play next season, and we'll see what happens then. Gronkowski reportedly is not happy with the Patriot way, tweeting out when Amendola signed with the Dolphins. He tweeted out a picture of him and Amendola in an earlier tweet, hugging, and something to the effect of, congratulations, be happy, be free, happy and free in capital letters. Supposedly that rubbed Belichick the wrong way. So there's a lot of drama, and probably some of it made up or embellished, I should say, in New England. But there is drama in New England. We're used to New England not having an off season with any turmoil. Everything's smooth. All the gears are greased, and everything's just flowing right along there. Now we see Brandon Cooks, as you said, gone, and that one shocked me. It's like, wow, really? Well, I mean, 1 year and bye. So I'm not sure what's going on in New England.
So let me jump. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go on. No. I'm finished.
Finished. Okay. So
I'm done.
I want to correct myself. I was correct on the stat that Marquette King was third, so at least I did my research. But I was way off on the Seahawk guy being second. Number one was Brett Kern from Tennessee. Number two is the damn Rams. Again, Johnny Hecker is number two. But Marquette King was number three. So maybe, he does need to go to the Seahawks.
Where's my guy?
Punter?
Sam Cook.
I'm not going to look down I'm not going to scroll down for a ball kicker.
Oh, he's going to top.
Sam Cook is working in a coal mine.
Get out of it.
Him and
If any of you guys are old, if any of you guys email us and you get that joke, then our audience is demographic. And I know that because of my grandma used to make me listen to oldies on the radio station.
Yeah,
no, she did. She did.
You're an old soul.
I'm 39 years old. You think I listen to Sam working in the coal?
Yeah,
No,
you
I'm
should
sorry,
listen to
sir.
Sam Cooke.
No, it's good, but yeah. Anyways, point being is, before we go to Shane, this whole like people tweeting out like congratulations, you're free, good luck to you, Amendola, whatever. Uh, I mean, what do you guys? What do you think that he's gonna? People on the page are gonna say like, I hope you fail the rest of your career, and I hope that you spend all your money, and I hope. I mean, what are you supposed to say? He now is the number one receiver in Miami. Does everyone think about that? Like, as opposed to negative, like, oh, you're out from Bill's thumb. How about the fact that you were just paid and brought in to take over Landry's spot, who's caught over 100 balls every year since he's been there? Like, I understand like why everyone always jumps to like, oh, everyone hates Belichick, and I blame that on the writers. The writer that did all that Belichick BS, there are some problems. I'll wait till we go back around, so I took too much time on the punter nonsense. But well,
Sam Cooke.
how about the fact that you guys bled and sweat and fought together, won a Super Bowl together, won one of the biggest comebacks together, and now you've just been paid as a number one receiver and been put into the place of one of the highest reception per game slots in the NFL. How about we look at that as opposed to the stuff that the writers want to put on? So that's just my kind of take on it. So why don't you take it, Shane, and we'll pass it back around.
Well, there's no question about that. Is that, you know what, with Belichick and the rest of the Patriot team, I mean, you're always going to get writers controversy due to the fact that he gives such wonderful interviews. And I mean, all right. So you gotta have the controversy. Now, I do think though that there is a little bit of dissension amongst some of these guys in there. I think Gronk is not a happy guy. Maybe it's something to do with more money. Maybe it's something to do with whatever it might be. He still is not that happy. And I get Armadillo. The guy's got Super Bowl rings. He's got himself a nice paycheck coming in. The guy's happy if that's where he wants to be. He's seen something in that locker room too that maybe the writing's on the wall. I mean, McDaniels is gonna take over a head coaching job there as soon as Belichick's gone. But I mean, the problem is that you're still gonna have some controversy this year due to the fact that you lost your defensive coordinator. I understand that this is all Belichick's offense, defense, special teams, but there are still going to be some problems in there. And I think Brady is going to also find it a little rough too. I just don't think that team is nearly as good as they want to be. And there's going to be some problems. I just think there's going to have some problems coming up. I really do. That's the way I'm seeing the Patriots this year.
Well, I agree with you on that, Shane. I think that this is a team that is on the wane, and it came out. I'm sure they expected to win that Super Bowl, and they didn't. But as far as Danny Amendola goes, I have a friend of mine, and she's a lifelong Patriots fan. She lived in Boston, and she moved to Phoenix now, and when I brought up the subject of Danny Amendola, her comment was that he's a traitor. That's all she had to say about it.
Wow.
And, because he was an important part of the Patriot team and he went to another team. And, I can resonate with that. I get it.
Real quick, Hirsch, can you resonate with that? I mean, they don't have a choice, and this is their livelihood. And you're talking about a bunch of people that are sitting at home. I mean, do you really resonate with that? I'll step out of this after this. I apologize. I know you don't like getting cut off, but I think that's so silly that someone who's taking care of their family because they have to move cities is somehow a traitor.
Well, they say there is no I in team, and and the management does it too. The management, like Jordy Nelson, is a case in point, who wanted to stay with the Packers and didn't want to be disloyal to his team, and he ended up going somewhere else. So yeah, you're right. It's a business, but I'll tell you, and this is overcomplicating it as well, but the sight of Brett Favre in a Jets uniform, and then even worse, a Vikings uniform, but that's a different issue with the retiring and coming out of retirement and all that. So it wasn't exactly, well, yeah, I guess it was his idea, but yeah, that's why I can resonate with that.
Well, I want to say one thing, that if this is all, there is something to a little turmoil, I think, in that locker room, because the one thing that Belichick is having a problem with, reportedly, is or that he's frustrated with, as far as Gronk is concerned, is that Gronk won't make a commitment. Gronk said after the Super Bowl, and it came out of, it just came out of nowhere, that he was contemplating retirement, that he was going to take a few weeks or a couple of weeks. And here we are months later, and he still hasn't made a decision. Now, I get it. I get the fact that, if you're not, or if you've been in the game this long, you have other opportunities knocking at your door, like Sly Stallone trying to get you to come on to his movie, or actually, I think he's going to be in a Sly Stallone movie. Hollywood's knocking at the door. The professional wrestling is knocking at the door. And these are things that you can do and make good money without sacrificing your body every week and every day. Let's not forget all of the hits and injuries that he's taken. So Belichick is probably a bit miffed, because he's a soldier type guy who just wants to move on to the draft. We're moving on to the draft. Doesn't like to answer questions. Doesn't like all the distractions outside of the football, outside of the locker room, off the field. And I think there's something to it. And you're right. Amendola became the big deal in Miami. It was a good move for Amendola. It wasn't. I don't think Belichick is mad at Amendola. It's just, these little things that send messages of capitalized, happy, and free. It can be misinterpreted. It can be interpreted. And then, by the way, Tom Brady put a like on that tweet as well. And so if we are to believe there's friction between Belichick and Brady and Gronk, then we can believe this is, just feeding into it. And I think that I believe that the Patriots are, as you said, Shane, I think they're or alluded to, that they're on their way down. This dynasty is falling apart, is tarnished, and all dynasties do.
Well, I'm going to say this is like Chris likes to say with his Seahawks, is that they're resetting. They're not rebuilding. They're going to reset. So I think they're going to be resetting. But I can't believe, though, you said wrestling's fake, though. Come on. Wrestling's not fake.
Who said that?
Well, Gronk likes to wrestle. His body takes a pounding. All right? It's not fake.
I spoke to wrestlers and professional wrestlers, and when I've asked that question on the side, I've gotten the answer, well, not really. I got hurt. Yeah, they do get hurt. It takes athleticism.
Here's the biggest thing, though, is they're going to have problems this year. That's all I'm saying, is they're going to have problems, and I don't think you're going to have very happy campers in there. And it's going to depend on what they decide to do with these draft picks that they got. And I think that's where we're going to find a couple of things that are going to be happening soon, is what are these draft picks that they just did with the Rams going to help them, and who they're going to choose, or are they going to get rid of them to bring in somebody like an Odell Beckham? Mr. Rose.
I think that's... Wait a minute. Should I... No, Chris, one more thing.
Oh, one more thing. Oh, no.
I think it's going to come down to... I think it's going to come down to... The key to this is Belichick. Everybody's... not everybody, but most people are trying to, or assuming that he's going to be there for the long term. I think this is why I say that this is coming to an end. Belichick is coming to an end. I don't think he's going to be there for past this year, and if past this year, the next year. I think he's got 2 years max in that job, and I think it's going to be his call, and he's going to walk away, or at least they're going to make it look that way.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah. One more thing. Go ahead.
No, I don't have one more thing.
He was joking. Sam
Okay,
could.
well, no, well, hey, it might be, but I think that there is something to be said about some of the points that were made that it's very important to talk about is what makes Belichick so interesting and so unique, and in my opinion, one of the best coaches in any sport, is he gets rid of people before he pays them, and he always finds other people that only work in his system.
Plug and play.
Somehow, yeah, and I could talk all I want about the AFC East, but somehow he makes that stuff work, and he does it. All the stuff about Gronk or not Gronk. What's the quarterback? Jimmy G and Brady not getting along. And remember before it was they got rid of this defender. They got rid of the guy who went to St. Louis or to St. Louis. That's how old I am. Arizona, the Cardinals. He just always seems to come through, and I think that's what makes him the greatest.
But Garoppolo wasn't his decision. Remember that.
How could you possibly know that?
Because
He's
was
the GM,
reported,
the vice president, and everything.
Yep, he's not the owner.
Yeah,
and it was reported that he was pretty miffed about that decision. Brady went over his head, supposedly.
Yeah, see, I'm not going to promote that kind of nonsense. So I think if you don't think that Bill Belichick can kibosh a trade, you're out of your mind. But I think that we've kind of come to our end of our mess around. Once again, folks, we're kind of launching this new network. We are still going to be on Tuesdays with the Pigskin Preview. We have the Knucklehead Fantasy Project coming out soon. This is the Knucklehead Podcast Network. These are the main guys that are doing it. Sorry to Dina, and thank you to Dina for her and her friends listening and being our number one fans. We appreciate you guys. Once again, on Twitter, that's at Knuckpods, KNUCKPODS. On Gmail, that's knuckleheadpods at Gmail. We're on Blog Talk Radio, blogtalkradio.com /knuckleheadpods. We got so much other stuff coming up. It's one of those slow news weeks, but we have some big shows coming up as far as draft and what's going on. And a lot of the things that we're talking about are basically depend on the draft and depend on what's going to happen. So very quickly, I want to pass around to Mr. Hershman. What do you want to say to people after the holidays and what you have coming up, or any questions you want to ask to your fellow people, or if you just want to say goodbye, and we'll just pass it around one time in the circle because it's the mess around. So we'll go Hirsch, Blaine, and then Coach Shane, and then we'll get out.
Well, I just hope everybody had a good holiday and don't drive drunk.
Okay.
So follow up with a football question, Blaine.
Since I'm on the spot for having to say something to my people.
I was more saying, like, the Packers are going to win. What do you think about Flacco?
Because he knows better.
Don't drive drunk. I'm not going to argue with that either. That is true. That's why it's the mess around, guys. That's why it's the mess around. Blaine, anything you want to ask or say?
No, I just wanted to say sorry, about the technical glitches. I think Mercury is a retrograde, or maybe it was a Steelers thing. If you noticed, I couldn't get on while we were talking Steelers, but right after we finished that, here I am. But I had some technical challenges, but it was kind of a weird situation, a freak thing. So we'll be back stronger on the next show in our Friday mess around.
There we go.
Shane.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think you got the same phone as Joe Flacco there, so always messing up.
Yeah.
But like I said,
Boo.
Cheap shot.
What? Okay.
That was a bad one.
One more thing. Hold on. One more thing. I can be reached at mentaledgeperformance.ca, or you can email me at coach@mentaledgeperformance.ca. Always a pleasure being on air with you guys. And even with you, Baltimore Blaine, when we hear you all the way from NASA with that first interruption that you did, that was fantastic. All right.
That was Mars, man.
You guys are great. That you guys are great, and Mr. Hirsch. All right, always a pleasure having you on, and to Dina and the rest of the team.
Yeah, I apologize to Shane for sucking at helping people give plugs because that's just how it is tonight.
Yes. Thanks, pal.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I was about to cut him off, but so we're launching stuff. If you do somehow find this pod or this YouTube or this iTunes, please pass along to your friends. Please give us a like. Please give us a review, thumbs up, subscription, all those fun things. We have a lot more coming out this year, and we just appreciate all you guys. So hopefully we can keep growing. You can also find us on the Pigskin Preview at blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports on Tuesdays at the Pigskin Preview. We usually do that on Tuesdays, but the host of that show is doing his career thing. So much love to him. Hope he's doing well. And thanks to all you guys. And let's have a good night.